Christian apologists always tell us, like Michael Kona, William Lane Craig, that Jesus' death and resurrection came from the earliest period of Christianity. They say, well, within 5 years of Jesus' crucifixion, the creed or the tradition of Jesus' death and resurrection was formulated or was spreading. It first came from the disciples of Jesus, then it went to Paul, then it went to the Gentile lands that Paul was preaching in. But that is that true? No, it isn't, because we read in the Q Gospel. Again, the Q Gospel is the earliest document we have, earliest New Testament document we have, or tradition that we have that predates all of the New Testament, Paul included. And it tells us about the sign of Jonah. Now, the sign of Jonah had nothing to do about the 3 days, 3 nights tradition or the death and resurrection of Jesus. According to the Q Gospel, scholars like Jacobi and Tabor have reconstructed the Q Gospel sayings, or the sign of Jonah saying in the Q Gospel, and it reads, "But some were demanding from him Jesus a sign, and Jesus said, 'This generation is an evil generation. It demands a sign. A sign will not be given to it except the sign of Jonah. For as Jonah became a sign, Jonah became to the Nevites a sign, so also will the Son of Humanity be to this generation.'" So they argue that the sign of Jonah had nothing to do with Jesus' death and resurrection. So the earliest period of Christianity, or the earliest period of Jesus' sayings, or the Jesus movement, had nothing to do with Jesus' death and resurrection. The Q Gospel, or the Q Gospel's version of the sign of Jonah, was talking about Jesus' miraculous rescue from death and his ascension into heaven alive. So Jesus is predicting his rescue or his survival, and he's predicting his assumption into heaven, not his resurrection and then his ascension to heaven. Rather, Jesus is talking about his disappearance, or his assumption into heaven without dying. In 1985, Dieter Ziller, a German scholar, argued this, given the Q Gospel. So the Q Gospel talked about, and again, this is further elaborated in Daniel A. Smith's The Empty Tomb, where Daniel A. Smith says that the Q Gospel talked about Jesus' disappearance. So the sign of Jonah was talking about Jesus surviving and his evelation.